Hey, it's your pal, the Dancing Housewife, and welcome to the Dancing Housewife podcast.
Today's episode is a treat. I'm joined by two incredible dancers who not only partner professionally on the competition floor, but also happen to be a couple off the floor. We're diving into what it's like to start ballroom dancing as an adult, how competing compares to other forms of dance, and yes, why there's a little bit of magic in sequins, hairspray, and pretending to be someone else for 3 minutes. Let me introduce you to my guest. Claire Widman has been dancing almost as long as she could walk. From ballet at age 6 to jazz, hip-hop, and tap as a teen, she's lived and breathed movement her entire life. After graduating from San Jose State, she stumbled into a full-time ballroom teaching position and never looked back. Today, she and her partner Dante teach and compete as independents at the Ballroom of Sacramento. Dante Camacho found dance a little later, beginning in 2019 with the intention of learning salsa. The goal? To meet a girl. Spoiler alert, it worked. He met Claire, who is now both his dance partner and his girlfriend. And he's been competing in American-style ballroom since 2021. When he's not in the studio, you'll likely catch him dancing socially at a salsa or bachata night somewhere in Sacramento. Claire and Dante, welcome to the Dancing Housewife podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. We're so excited to be here today.
Again, I'm so sorry. I apologize to you and to my listeners for this terrible cough. All right, Claire, we're going to start with you. Your dance background is extensive and started early, but ballroom came a bit later. What drew you in?
Honestly, the promise of being able to compete again. When I was a kid, I competed in ballet and I competed in contemporary and jazz, did some solos, and it was just exhilarating to be on the floor. So when I got, the opportunity to do that again, it was like, oh, and I get to do it with the fringe and with the whole new level of glam.
Was there anything surprising about the switch from jazz or ballet competitions to the ballroom world?
Yeah, there's a lot of techniques that surprised me. I remember when I started doing waltz, I thought, oh, it's just going to be exactly like ballet. And then I had the coach that I was working with at the time, like, no, you need to step forward with your heels. And I remember being so cringed out by that. Oh, I can't plant my feet at that moment. I can't turn my feet out. What is this? So I was surprised to find more overlap between ballet and rhythm and Latin than with the smooth dancing.
Yeah. I agree. I found that too. I wasn't a ballet dancer, but I was a gymnast, so I had a lot of dance in my background.
Yeah.
And when we danced smooth, and our coaches said, "I want pitch and toes," I was like, "What? You're kidding me? That's like heresy."
Yeah.
Okay, so Dante, you started dancing as an adult. What was that like? Was it intimidating? Was it exhilarating? A little bit of both?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit of both. It's a little bit intimidating because it becomes very obvious very quickly how much there is to learn.
Right.
And especially for a dance like ballroom dancing that has this extensive tradition of competition and high levels of technique, it's very formal. That can be a little overwhelming at first. So yeah, that's kind of all my experience with it.
What happened that you had this mindset shift from I'm going to be a salsa dancer, I'm going to be a social dancer, to taking on formal ballroom training and competition?
There's a couple of things. So I think first off, I realized that if I wanted to have a career as a dancer, I needed to get better at it. And the easiest way to do, or I mean, not the easiest way, but the quickest way to do that was to compete because it pushes you to keep learning.
Right.
Or it forces you to take your craft a little more seriously.
Right.
So I noticed very quickly the correlation between, having lots of lessons, teaching lots of students, and being a competitor.
Yeah.
Right, or being sort of that higher caliber of professional.
Yeah.
The cool thing is that I really liked it. It was a very unique thing that I'd never done before.
Yeah.
And it's quite exciting to get out under the lights and with all the glitz and glam and just perform.
Yeah. That's a good segue to my next question because I know one of the things you both love is the glamour of ballroom, the costumes, the characters, tell me more about that. What's the fun or fantasy of it for you guys?
Well, for me, I like to have stories from our relationship play out in our choreography. That
Oh,
part is
yeah.
fun to kind of show off our relationship to our students in a way
Yeah.
because, they love to gossip about, the different teacher couples and what they're doing and, oh, are they going to move in together? Are they going to get married? All this kind of stuff. And so playing the character a little bit for the students and letting them have that story
Little,
is kind of
little,
great.
little sort of like a little peek into your private life, right?
Yeah, exactly. A little peek behind the curtain
Yeah,
to kind of
yeah.
see our
So
relationship.
Dante, you once mentioned that you love becoming different characters on the floor. Can you explain what that feels like when you perform? I mean, I know you're always Claire's boyfriend, but what other characters do you embody when you're on the floor?
Um, there's this sort of arrogance that you are expected to have as the lead
Yeah,
in ballroom dancing competition that most other places it's not encouraged to be that arrogant, right? It's not appropriate, it's not polite. But as in competition, when you're the lead, it's expected that you're going to walk out with this cockiness and you're going to
right,
maintain that the whole time, regardless of sort of this more subtler details of, some dancers are more tender, some are more aggressive, what have you. There's always that like, now I am that guy,
right,
and you have to do that all, 4 heats, 5 heats, what have you.
right, right.
It's fun to do.
Yes.
Um, and the part that isn't so much of a character is because you kind of play up your arrogance. I'm not that cocky just out and about. But
Right.
when you're training to compete and then you go do your routines, you do them well, right? You have that feeling like, oh, I'm getting good at this. You don't have to. You're not necessarily faking some arrogance. You earn it a little bit, especially as you
Yeah.
can here. Um, so it's only partly an act, and part of it is no. It feels good to be good at something, and I think
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
rewarding aspect of
I
competition.
think I think also that makes me think of one of the things that I love about ballroom dancing, whether it's, smooth or standard Latin or rhythm. I love the male female dynamic. That's part of what the beauty of the dance is just, we're made for different things. And,
Mhm.
the lead, the follow. And I know that there are some times when you're leading the movements, Claire, just like there's sometimes there's sometimes when I should be leading the movement. Probably I lead the movement more than I should be, but I tend to back lead. But you know, that's one of the beautiful things I think about ballroom dancing is that male female dynamic. I think that there's some beauty in gender neutral too, some of those dances, but I really love the dynamic between a man and a woman on the ballroom dance floor. So, which brings me to how did your partnership and your relationship begin? I'm sorry, I need a little peek behind the curtain. Um, which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? The partnership or the relationship?
So when we first got together, we met sort of through the same company, but at different locations.
Mm-hmm.
And I had recognized him from the company and saw him at a salsa social. And I was like, well, I know he's a professional, so I know he's going to be a good lead. So I just walked up, introduced myself. Hey, I'm Claire. You work at this studio, right? And he's like, okay, who is she?
Who's this crazy woman?
Yeah, I knew I was going to come across a little bit creepy, but that's okay. He danced with me, I don't know if he remembers that, but then, we started seeing each other at practices. We actually had different partners at the time.
Okay.
I was competing with someone and he was competing with somebody else, and there wasn't really any overlap in those friend groups. And then we just eventually ended up at the same competition, and we were all hanging out as a big group. And I just think that we had like a spark then. And then we
Okay.
started texting, and then, so
Yeah.
we did make a couple before we were a dance couple.
Okay. Okay. I dance with my husband, and there are good things about that because you don't have to fake so much, right? Especially in the flirty dances and the love dances, right? You don't have to fake so much, but it can also put stress on your relationship. So, how do you balance that? How do you balance your relationship off the dance floor with your dance partnership, especially in high stress competition environments or in tough practices? How do you do that?
One thing that we've been doing a lot lately that is helpful is at the beginning of the week, maybe like on Sunday or Monday, we'll pre-plan. We'll look at our schedule, look at our lessons, and decide when and for how long we're going to practice that week. And that, with a clear mind and sort of the perspective of looking at the entire week, we can decide, okay, this is how much time and energy we have to practice this week, and we stick to it. So, and it goes both ways, right? Even if, the day arrives and it's like, I don't really feel like practicing, but hey, we said we'd do 90 minutes during this block, so let's do it.
Right.
Or there's that feeling of like, competition's next week. Maybe we should throw in an extra 2 hours, but it's like, you don't want to burn yourself out. You still got to take care of things at the house, do your chore, whatever, right?
Right.
Kind of planning it ahead of time with a clear mind has been, I think, a very good approach.
That's good advice. I'm going to take that.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that. I'm going to note that. Let's talk about competition versus social dancing, because Dante, I know you're very active in the social salsa and bachata scene, right? So how does social dancing impact what you do competitively?
They're very, very, to me, they feel very different.
Right.
Right. I mean, the biggest thing is that in competition, you have set choreographies that you are constantly working on. While when you're social dancing, you're freestyling, you're in the moment. I do feel like, kind of to get to your question, that the competitive dancing has helped my social dancing more than the other way around.
Okay.
Because you can kind of take the technique of high level ballroom dancing, the ideas of connection and frame and balance, all the kind of dance concepts, and kind of give a toned down version of that to your social dancing.
Right.
And it's a bit less the other way around. That's what I found.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Claire, I'm interested in your perspective because you come from a world of choreography, basically. Everything you've done has been choreographed. How do you feel about the more improvisational world of social dance? Do you like it? Does it feel awkward to you? I'm always curious because I'm not a good social dancer because I come from being a gymnast with choreographed routines. And my husband and I almost jumped almost immediately into competing because we were both athletes. And so I feel awkward when I social dance. I'm just not good at it. I like having a script. So I'm curious about you, how you feel about that.
Yeah. At first I totally felt the same way as you. It was like whenever he would do something that I didn't know how to react to, I would get a little upset because I'm like, no, I just look stupid, but I find that when I feel like I'm having writer's block with my dancing, with my choreography, or if I feel like things are getting stale in the choreography, social dancing is that reset for me. Because I've grown to really love it too. Like we go out West Coast dancing sometimes, like we'll go salsa and bachata dancing. I've recently discovered fusion dancing. And that is just so freeing because it's kind of like contemporary improv in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, it's always that like therapeutic side of dance that I've always gotten.
Oh, yeah.
So it can help, honestly, for me. Because I get too rigid in what the choreography is, and I get too like focused on, is it on 8 or is it on 7? What are we hitting this count on?
Yeah.
Once I social dance, I'm like, okay, I can actually just relax a little bit.
Yeah, Claire, I can understand that. My husband and I were a little burnt out this year. We typically dance 9 dance, smooth and rhythm and 9 dance, and we decided we were going to take on Latin. And so we spent almost a full year learning Latin, and we competed in 3 styles at national. And we had to qualify separately for 9 dance than we did for smooth and rhythm, and then qualified for Latin. And it was overwhelming. And one of the things that we're doing is we're gonna start going to social parties because we feel like we want to reconnect, or at least I feel like I want to reconnect. My husband doesn't like to social dance very much, but I want to reconnect with why we started to dance in the first place, which was to have a hobby to enjoy together. So I can understand what you're saying about sort of the mental reset. So I'm going to pivot again. a lot of my listeners are adult or senior dancers, people who started ballroom later in life, like me. I started in my 50s. So what do you say to those people who feel like dance is just not intuitive for them?
I would say that it becomes intuitive, which,
Okay.
that might be frustrating to hear because it's like, well, does that probably have to wait for that
Yeah,
to
I want
sort
to
of,
say, when is it going to become? Because I've been dancing for 10 years. It's
yeah,
not
well,
especially intuitive yet.
um, yeah, I mean, but you might have experienced this where, you've done, like if you say in Walt, I've done, a left box and a right box enough times to sort of have an intuition for how those things feel, how they
Yes.
connect, how to transition, how to be with my partner. Like the things that are the things that are unintuitive about dancing, I think, are the things that you don't have to do in regular life.
Yeah.
The difference between, as an individual, I move, and maybe I don't do a lot of individual dances, like you did. So maybe this is a bit different, but it's one thing to like going about your life, you're an individual, you move as an individual, and then in partner dancing, you move as a unit.
Right.
That's not intuitive at first, but it becomes intuitive. There's enough.
Yeah.
This is what I tell my students: there's enough internal logic to these dances that once you learn some of the rules and how they work, you will learn faster thereafter. So the learning curve gets less steep rather than more steep over time, I would say.
Yeah,
Well,
I actually agree. Yeah. I'm sorry, Claire, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I would totally add to that, saying that yeah, as you get more experience, the intuition grows, but also there's a certain intuition within everybody's body to move to music.
Yes.
And so within choreography, sometimes we get so stuck on perfect. We get so stuck on, and I know this from ballet, so stuck on technique that we lose why we started dancing in the first place, like you said. And so my advice to the people that don't feel like intuition is there, pay attention to your body and maybe let go of one of the techniques so that you can get back to the fun part of your choreography.
Yeah. For me, I think sometimes I confuse intuition with automaticity. So I'm thinking a lot about technique, or I'm thinking a lot about new choreography, especially because I don't learn choreography as quickly as I did 10 years ago. I just don't. It's just a fact of life. And I probably have gained a lot of intuition, but I'm so focused on the technique, like you said. So if I step back, I was actually I'm doing a showcase, and I'm doing a standard foxtrot with a young pro in one of the studios where we train. And my husband was watching, and the last time I did the dance, the pro said, "Can you just stop worrying and just have fun?" And my husband videoed it, and he was like, "Man, that last time you danced, you just looked great. Your technique looked great." And I thought, that's the key. I've got to stop thinking about technique. Let's just start, like Nike, just do it, right?
Right. Sometimes too, your body has already gained those muscle memory pathways.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn to trust our bodies. I think that's like a big part of this, trust that you do the thing it's supposed to do most of the time.
So that's a good, okay, again, I like that our conversation is pretty organic because it's a good segue into geeking out a little bit. Technique versus expression. So that eternal tension, hitting the movement right versus feeling it. How do you both approach that balance?
Well, so I found that acquiring better technique has allowed me to express more in my dancing. And that might have something to do with me starting a bit later in life, not starting as a kid.
Right.
Because I remember early on being coached and having, people tell me, oh, well, you gotta, foxtrot is like rolling hills and a certain emotion, and then tango is a different emotion. And I'm like, that's not very helpful because I just don't feel like I look cool at all. Like I don't know how to take that idea and then actually make it a physical thing that I do.
Yeah.
So for me, technique has always led to expression, but I do understand the tension between the two because you can overthink your routines. You can be super in your head about, and then my foot does this and my hand does that.
Right.
And you sort of lose the the point of what you're doing. So at a certain point, yeah, you do, like she said, you do have to trust your muscle memory, trust the time that you've put in to practice your techniques, trust that it will happen, and then get back to focusing on the music, on the storytelling, on the emotions.
Yeah. Claire, this one's for you because you've talked about the emotional intent of movement. How do you teach that? How do you teach that to adults? How do you teach that to kids?
Well, for kids, it's easy because they're more of a blank slate. They don't really have traumas. They don't have necessarily, well, some of them do, unfortunately, but they don't have the same like
inhibition, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot less inhibition because they've had like a lot less life experience in general, you know? And so with kids, I will usually start with exercises like, okay, we're going to play. This is for my contemporary classes, but it can translate to ballroom too. We're going to play a game where you're going to mimic different animals. Okay, now you're going to mimic different TV show characters. And it's insane, but they have to let those experiences out.
Yeah.
Then when we bring it into the context of dance, I try to make really visual analogies. So like when I do arm styling, I'll give them an exact thing that they would do every day. So like, I'm like, okay, you're going to reach out and you're going to grab a mango and you're going to bring it back in.
Okay.
You know, something like that.
Yeah.
And so that can give them a picture of what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
That will get to the movement a lot of the times. And for adults, I do the exact same thing because honestly, I find that, you know, dance is, it's the opportunity for adults to be kids again.
Right.
We talked about dressing up and the glamour and that side. Like every little girl wants to be a princess. Well, not all of them, but most of us.
Yeah.
You know, be a princess when we grow up. And so it's kind of like we get to be that when we're dancing. So some people will be like, you know, extra giddy when they're in a group class or training or, you know, more silly than they normally would at work. They can come in their fringe skirts and all this stuff. And so that's part of the emotion of it too, you know? So I try to, teach adults and kids the same exact way and it makes it more fun for everyone.
I wish I could take your classes.
I wish you could too. It'd be fun.
Yeah, maybe sometime if I'm out in California. You know, this has been a really great conversation. We're about running out of time. You both bring a lot of joy to your dancing and it's contagious, I can tell. But before we go, I need to get some specifics. Now, I know you dance 9 dance, right? Smooth and rhythm. That's what you compete in. Okay.
Yes.
And where can listeners find you or learn more about your teaching?
Well, so you can find us at the Sacramento or the Ballroom of Sacramento.
Okay.
It's on Micron Avenue in Sacramento, California. You can also find us on Instagram. Our handle is Claire and Dante Dancing. Just all one word.
Okay. All lowercase. Okay.
Yep. And you can see some of our progress there. So we'll usually post about our classes and about where we're performing and
Yeah. Well, fantastic. I'll include those links in the show notes and I will be following you. I am at the Dancing Housewife. So you'll see if some creepy dancing housewife follows you, you'll know it's me. Anyway, Claire and Dante, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you so much for having us today. We had a great time.
And to all my listeners out there, keep dancing, keep showing up, and don't be afraid of a little glitter. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a dance buddy, leave us a review or a 5-star rating, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. This is the Dancing Housewife, Claire and Dante, signing off. And until next time, happy dancing!
That's all, folks.